Third in our series of videos on the Meniscus Analytics platform, where we're looking at creating a very simplified IoT type application. So in our last set of videos, first of all we created some templates, and in those templates we created two items, a raw item and a consumption item, and then we applied those templates and created just 5 entities, each of which has a copy of the raw and the consumption items the calculations, and then we populated some data into them. So we've now got raw data and we've got a consumption meter. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to add some more calculation functionality into the templates, and then we're going to replicate those calculations out to those other entities, so you can start to see the power and the potential of using MAP for large-scale analytics and IoT applications. So what we're going to do first of all, we're going to create another aggregated item, and we're going to call this one, we're going to take a day consumption. So this is going to aggregate my consumption and into just during the daytime. So we'll set some times to do that, and let's just create another one, and we'll just call it night consumption. Make sure I spell it right. I copied one which I did earlier. And then finally we'll just create a calculated item. So this is now going to use we're going to call it the day-night ratio, and that's going to calculate the ratio between the day consumption and the night consumption. So quite simple calculations, but it gives you an idea of capabilities. So in this day consumption, now the source data here, we're going to now change it. It automatically picked up raw data, but we're going to change it to consumption. So we're going to use our consumption data. We're going to leave it as a daily aggregation, but we're going to put in here a modify expression. So we're going to modify this data, and we're going to create the calculation. So this uses C#. So this is we haven't tried to simplify it down and make it a simpler UI for this at the moment. Effectively, this is C#. So it's looking and saying, right, if the time is between 7 in the morning and 2300 at night, then it'll aggregate those values into this meter. Otherwise, it'll use a value of 0 if it's outside those time ranges. So that gives me a calculation of my day consumption. My night consumption is going to be very similar. I'm just again change that meter into my source meter as to the consumption. Better spell it right. Does it work? Consumption. We're going to leave it again as day. So you can see every time I change it, the item saves itself, and the day consumption, nighttime consumption, is similar to the day consumption, except we've just reversed the logic at the end. So if it's between 7 and 2300, it'll put a 0 in, otherwise it'll use the values. So we're going to add some other functionality in later videos on the initialization and invalidation expressions, which will allow us to invalidate all this data from a group. So later on we're going to group all the data together, and then we can show how we're going to use and set properties on those groups so that we can just change all the consumption times from one particular location within MAP. So that's my those 2 meters created, and the calculated meter, there is no source because it's just going to be a straightforward calculation. And again, I'm just going to paste this value in. I'm sorry, it's just going to be a C# expression again. So it's not as simple as it might be, but that's where we are at the moment. So this is basically just going to divide the nighttime day consumption by the nighttime consumption. And if the nighttime consumption is 0, it will put a value of 0. So that's the very first part of the expression, was actually saying if the nighttime consumption is equal to 0. So this bit here is basically saying if the nighttime consumption is equal to 0, then put 0. Otherwise, we'll have a divide by 0 error. So that's the template created. And again, if we want to now apply the template, we're going to reload the data again that we've our file, which has imported the data, and now we can go into the meters, and we can see in here that we've now got day-night value and nighttime consumption meters, and MAP is now calculating this data as we're speaking. So each of these entities has got all these calculations set up, and MAP is just calculating its way through it at the moment. So there's a value. So that's a calculated consumption. It'll update the little icons on the left in a minute. So effectively that's my day consumption, and that's my ratios. So We can go back up to the top one, look at the first again. So here's my little mini graphs, and there's my consumption data and nighttime consumption. Now remember, we could, if we wanted to, instead of when we loaded it through here, we loaded just 5 entities, we could load 30,000 or 300,000 entities, and again in another video we'll show you how to create the CSV file importers to do that, to make it easier for you. So that's the end of our third video. Thanks very much indeed for listening in.